Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for coming today. You might have noticed my little dance up there with one of our wonderful long-term sponsors, Varvid, who's doing our video streaming. Just want to make sure that I was communicating well up there with the booth. So welcome and thank you so much for coming to what is our 13th annual Mark Anderson Predictions event, conveniently on Friday the 13th of January. So thank you for coming and making this a part of launching your year. We find that this event is one of the perfect ways to start our year out right with enriching and stimulating conversations, and we're so grateful to have you as a part of this conversation in our community. We also want to welcome our streaming group coming in from all over Washington State and throughout the world, and in particular, one of our peer groups in Eastern Washington who has a lot of people streaming from their offices, GWADA. So very happy to have them participating again this year, and we'll be getting Q&As from them over the course of the Q&A session at the end. So thank you again for coming today and starting your year out right. And over the arc of the rest of the year, we have a lot of different programs available for you to help connect and engage and thrive with one another in our innovation and technology community. You might have noticed also on our tables are sponsorship brochures and some S&S brochures that Paul will be speaking about later. So I'm going to turn it over to Dwayne.
Thank you, May. My name is Dwayne Neufeld. I'm the president of the board, if you haven't heard from me before. My job is to thank our sponsors, and I think before I go through this list, I really need to thank Mark Anderson for sponsoring this event coming here. If you're not in New York or San Francisco, you may not have been able to come to this event before, but he comes here every year, and we really appreciate it. I just want to give a hand right now for Mark for doing this for all these years. So we've got some great sponsors that help put on this event today. First off is Alphatech Technologies. We want to thank them. PH is on our board right now, so they've had board involvement for many years. We appreciate them being here. Emergency Reporting, another longtime sponsor of TAG, now a Galactic sponsor, but again signing up to help out for this event. We have Skagit Bank, who's been an ongoing sponsor of this event. We appreciate their help and them being here today as well. Business Pulse, you probably saw the ad for this event in the Business Pulse. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to co-sponsor, be involved with them. And then you heard from Varvid up there doing the video. They've been a sponsor of this for quite a few years, and we appreciate their help. Finally, we can't go on without thanking Whatcom Community College for this incredible facility here and the things they do in our community. So let's have a hand for all our event sponsors. So I just want to take another moment and talk about our association sponsors. Association sponsors are those that say we believe in what TAG does, and we just want to help you do what you do throughout the year. The first sponsor, our first so far Galactic sponsor, is Emergency Reporting. They've been a big part of our community, done a lot this year. We appreciate that. Then we have some global sponsors. We've already mentioned Alphatech, thank you. Bellingham National Bank Building and Clear Story Investments, another developer getting on board with what we're doing in the community here. Comcast Business, Saturna Capital, Summit Law, Thompson Law, Western Washington, and WECU. So big thanks for all our global sponsors. And then we have a couple more sponsors, our gold sponsors, CyberWatch West, Veritas Media, and VSH. Again, we appreciate what they've been involved in. And then our silver sponsors, Heritage Bank and Pogo Zone. So I'm very excited for this event. It's always a highlight for my year. I'd like to make 3 predictions as you get your note cards out to take notes of Mark's presentation. Going back from last year, I think we all have to agree and predict there are going to be things that happen that will surprise us this year, just like last year. Secondly, I want to predict that the waterfront and TAG are going to make a big difference in this community over the next year. How many of you believe that? Finally, there's going to be a lot of good news this year, I predict, and the people involved in that good news in our community, a lot of those people are going to be right here at these tables. There's a lot of great decision makers here at these tables and leaders. I encourage you, before you leave today, shake a hand with somebody you haven't seen for a while, introduce yourself to somebody you don't know. I'm always amazed at the news throughout the year and the people in this room that are part of that news. So thank you very much for being here. I appreciate being here with you. Paul?
Paul Gray has been a long-time TAG supporter and leader and was a long-term board member. So turning it over to Paul now.
Thanks, Meg. Well, here we are again for the 13th time. So who was here last year? Okay. So, Mark, that's good. You get repeat business. All right. Well, my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Mark Anderson. As I said, this is the 13th time, but I want to remind everybody, too, that Mark volunteers his time to come to talk to us, and that's a big value to our community. I think he's kind of adopted us as his city. And you're aware of Mark's credentials from what Meg sent out in the invitation, but as usual, I kind of want to go behind the scenes and tell you a little bit about what Mark has been up to since the last time he was here. He did his 14th annual conference, the Fire Conference, this past fall in Park City. Robert Anderson, the director of the Department for Technology Transfer and IP at the Illinois Institute of Technology, had this to say: "I came to the conference to get my brain stretched, and now my hair hurts." So mark your calendar for this coming year, October 10th and 13th. Mark will be doing the 15th Fire Conference at the beautiful Stein Erikson Lodge. Just a great place. There's cards on your table about the conference, and Mark, all attendees here today, $500 discount off of it. There's a code there on the card for you as well. Now, Mark continued over this past year with his deep research and analysis of major economies, emerging technologies around the world. And Mark's Strategic News Service Global Report's now in its 21st year of publication. So Mark is also extending a 25% discount if you're not already a subscriber to sign up for that. And if you're a new subscriber, then you get another $600 off if you go to the Fire Conference. So how about that for generosity? So let me come back to some of the things Mark's been up to. He co-founded a new partner recognition lab at the University of California, San Diego. He's a partner in a new undiagnosed consortium launched this year with the 6 leading precision medicine firms in the world, including Harris & Harris VC company. He and his team published the paper version of Stealth Japan, and it's now available on Firebooks, so you can get it there. Mark announced and launched the Fire Conference, a completely new fundamental theory of universal drivers called flow and interaction, with the support from leaders in economics, finance, biology, medicine, and other fields. He launched a new nonprofit to run the Carbon Trifecta Initiative with new support from 4 national laboratories. At the CEO Challenge, which is just awesome, at the Fire Conference this fall, the group designed a completely new computer architecture. And they call it the Flow Computing System. The team also designed and launched a related application for climate change monitoring called the Earth Energy Monitoring System. Just a little thing they did while they were at the conference. In Mark's spare time, he completed and submitted the legal petition to the National Marine Fisheries Service for a whale protection zone off San Juan Islands. This petition needs lots of support and may be the last chance we have to save our orcas, so please consider lending your support. This proud papa saw his son become the CEO of Invent IP after his work became the most viewed investigative segment in the history of 60 Minutes. Pretty impressive. His daughter, Barrett, is now the CEO of her own startup media company, Scout Media, and having just won the Matter.com incubator competition, and she's spending the last 9 months in New York City. With a cumulative accuracy on his predictions of 94.7%, let us give Mark a nice warm tag welcome. We gave Mark some time ago a perpetual award, and each year we add another year to it. So we don't give him the screws to put this in? Okay. All right, well, you have to go to the hardware store, Mark. Thank you. All right.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be back again. Kind of my favorite Bellingham thing, and always fun, I think. Before we get into the really serious stuff, I thought we should do some medium serious or not so serious things. First, I want to say thanks to TAG, to Meg, to Paul, everybody on the staff. You're great. And yes, I have. Adopted Bellingham as my second city, I guess. Thank you very much. So Paul mentioned the orca thing, and I have some news which just happened. And since I really care about this subject, I thought we'd lead off with the killer whales. And as he mentioned, we've spent a long time, really since '97, working on this project in terms of science, figuring out what was killing them. And then in the last 3 years, working on this legal petition to the federal government, National Marine Fisheries Service, so they would start a process for creating a whale protection zone on the west side of San Juan, which we think actually can save the population. Seriously believe the science is there. If we do it right, they will survive. We think if we don't do that, they will not survive. So a pretty black and white situation. 2 mornings ago, it was filed in the Federal Register. So now it's real. It hasn't happened yet, but now it's real. Now the federal government has taken our work and made it into a process. So there will be a 3-month process and then a 1-year process. And I would encourage all of you who are interested to send in comments, which is now the time to do that. We have 90 days for that. And then there will be hearings later, and come to the hearings and yell really loud how much you care about the whales. End of rant. But it happened. Pretty cool. And then I want to test something on you. So there's this meme that I've been trying to get launched. Paul got it right away, so we'll see how this goes. But you probably all know what the White House is, right? And you probably all know that almost all the meetings that have been happening with the new administration have been happening in Trump Tower in New York. And we thought it would be a good thing, helpful thing for the American people to have a name for that place. And we think that the proper name ought to be the Gold House. So I want you all to kind of spread that meme around. Well, you know, the Gold House, the White House, and yeah, it'll catch on, I think. And there's another part of this. So I'm going to talk about Mr. Trump in a few minutes, but I wanted to mention something I'm very proud of, in addition to Evan becoming CEO of InventIP, which is arguably the best group in terms of understanding how China makes money, and who did the work that was on 60 Minutes. We had the honor last week of being asked by the new administration what needed to be done to solve the problem of the trade issues between the United States and China. And that was an honor. And after 5 years of work, it's nice to be asked, you know. So we have high hopes that maybe after all this time, we may actually have gotten to the level of play where we could affect some good things that would lead to win-win situations both with China and the United States. That's kind of a lead-in for me to the same structure I've used every year here, which is we'll talk a little bit about the economic landscape we're facing in this coming year, and then we'll talk a little bit about the tech landscape, and then I'll read off my predictions, and we'll have Q&A here, and I think also in Eastern Washington. Is that right? Yeah, okay. And it's kind of frustrating, I guess, if you're in my shoes when you watch the election going on. Everybody's got their own emotions and opinions about what's happening and where the jobs went and who did what to whom and what ought to happen next. It's a complicated world, and it's obvious, it's hard to understand. It's very hard to understand how the economy works. We think that we've got a pretty good proof case that we've got it figured out on some basis because the predictions work out. So that's one way of asking yourself if you've got a good grasp of what's happening. And this particular year, 2017, is in a way the culmination of a lot of the things we've talked about here for the last few years. So a year and a half ago, we made a call that China was entering a time of collapse, of economic collapse. And that was true. That is true. I think now everybody knows it. And try as they might to stop it or hide it or make it seem less important or less frightening to all of us, it's actually quite scary. And I'm sure that the folks in charge are terrified. And you can see this through their actions. The renewed attempt to control currency movements just a few weeks ago, and the measures they're taking to prevent people from lots of different things that would have to do with yuan values. And the fight that they're putting on now, not to lower the value of the yuan, but to buttress it, because in fact it's crashing. And if you ask yourself, without intervention, what would the real value of the yuan be in terms of dollars? That's a really interesting question. I mean, probably all have our own opinions, but it wouldn't be what it is, obviously, because they're intervening on a regular basis. So with all the intervening that's intended to prop up this currency that used to be the opposite, or they're trying to push it down, we're already back to where it was, almost. We're almost back into the 8 range. And it probably, if there were no interventions, you'd probably be seeing it in the 12 range or something even lower per dollar. So imagine the world, or imagine China, if that kind of devaluation were allowed to happen. That's actually, in true productivity terms or in true economic terms, that's where we are now. The currency is crashing, as well as the economy. And what this means to everybody else is a time of great risk. The best news is, as we've talked about here, the U.S. is in a better position than anybody else. So I'm not here to scare you about these things, but if you were Brazil, or if you were Mexico, or if you were Venezuela, or most of Africa, this would be a very, very frightening time, because the country which had been your prime trading partner is pulling back and actually doesn't have much money. Probably, in some sense, is bankrupt. And so countries don't go bankrupt, so there's no real meaning to that term. But probably, if you did a balance sheet on China right now, they owe more than they have. And all of us who thought that there was these huge reserves, trillions of dollars of reserves in currency and so forth, that's probably not there. When you balance out the local loans and the national loans, all these things together, there's probably nothing there on the balance sheet. It's probably negative. And certainly we're going to see negative growth again this year. So while they're publishing positive growth numbers, still in the kind of 6 range, we continue to think it's probably -2, or something like -2. So what does this mean if you're the EU or America? It's a time where I expect to see China continue to go down, step by step by step by step, bad news by bad news, kind of on a morning by morning basis, and trying to prevent us from seeing it clearly, and their own people from seeing it clearly, and trying to prevent the damage that seems inevitable from happening. It's a very painful process when it's a top-down, command-driven economy. And everybody else around in circles, depending upon their exposure as countries, will be experiencing the same problems. And all these projects, the one belt, one road, one nightgown, whatever you want to call it, I think it's a silly phrase, but the extension into Africa and other countries to buy ports and to control trade and to force use of the yuan probably felt a little bit okay when the yuan was doing all right and when the Chinese economy looked like it was doing all right. But if it's crashing and you're locked into this, it's not okay. It's not going to be fun anymore. And I believe that's what 2017 will look like on the global economic stage. Part of what's happening now is that everybody's waking up to this stuff. So we here in this little coffee clash have been talking about this for a number of years. But for a lot of folks, this is a wake-up experience. This last 12 months probably. So it's extremely frightening and difficult for most world leaders to get their arms around this. And yet they are getting it. And so what you're seeing, just since we've talked last time, a complete change of government in Britain from a person I consider one of the worst prime ministers in history of the country, David Cameron, to a woman, Theresa May, who seems pretty smart. And instead of selling the country out for cash to China, she seems to be kind of rational about the whole process. And great, she's let some things go and some things stay, but basically she seems pretty darn smart. She's a tough woman. She reminds me a little bit of Maggie Thatcher in a different way. So good for Britain. And by the way, willing to say no. That's a complete change. Angela Merkel in Germany clearly owned, in a certain export sense, by China 5 years ago, definitely willing to say no, and have said no now to mergers and other things, showing that they kind of caught on, and you can't buy all of our top tech companies, and no, you can't get all of our IP. We need that ourselves. And so that it's pretty obvious that the world that can say no is now saying no. Can't be much fun for China because they're already in difficulties, then this stuff happens. The same time we're seeing the same things with commodities, whether it's aluminum or coal or make a list of steel. One of the great difficulties when something like this occurs is that you get overproduction, overcapacity in raw materials, and that destroys markets. And it can happen not just in raw materials, but in anything. So we should all be prepared for overcapacity. It's already happening. And one of the results, of course, has been destruction of the steel business. So there still is one. I don't mean there isn't one, but many, many tens of thousands of steel workers outside of China have been thrown out of work, and inside of China. But China has then rehired their own workers and relit the furnaces in shuttered steel plants against any kind of economic rule you might dream up. But the result is they put their own workers to work, and then they put everybody else's workers in the world out of work. And so it's really hard if you're a union or if you're a worker bee, you're just trying to pay your bills, tougher and tougher right now to do that if you're in these industries which are facing oversupply. And that includes the United States. So U.S. Steel, as an example, is fighting tooth and nail right now to maintain tariffs against imported Chinese steel at prices that are dump prices. So that's the basic picture, is what happens when we're in like chapter 2 or 3 of this story that we've been sharing, where you go from bad practices that will create trouble based on IP theft to and currency manipulation, to the result of those domestically in China, and then to the result of those to the rest of those trading partners around China and the world. That's where we are right now. And it's not likely to end quickly or well. But all the money that can take a trip is taking a trip to the United States. We, for whatever reasons, no, we'll get back to Mr. Trump in a minute, but we generally look pretty good to the world. And so investors worldwide are putting their money into our markets. The Chinese people who are elites are bringing their money to America. Chinese businesses are trying to buy American companies, sometimes for the right reasons, sometimes for the wrong reasons. And there's a lot of this going on. So our economy is looking great. And I don't think that's going to stop. I think that even with all of the difficulties I just described, I think the U.S. economy, in a perverse way, I guess, will do better than it would normally have done because of this flight of capital and of interest from other places that are being harmed. So for us in this room, generally I think we're going to have a good year. It's going to be really fun. But we should be mindful of the damage that's happening elsewhere, because it's going to be a really tough year for everybody else. Part of the frustration in watching this election has been the confusion over TPP, over trade, over free trade, over jobs lost, and all these things, which seem to be dealt with even by good economists piece by piece by piece, instead of trying to get a global, an integrated view of the systems that create the problems. And if you do it that way, it's pretty clear that many of the things that Mr. Trump has said about China are correct. And specifically, if your intellectual property leaves your country and goes somewhere else, jobs are going to follow. I can give you the 9 steps it takes, but jobs are going to follow. So whether it's a matter of your stuff, you go to Cisco and you watch them lose complete markets to Huawei. Well, Huawei has a lot of workers. Cisco's firing. It's not a complicated situation. Cisco's shrinking, Huawei is growing. And this is true over and over and over again, company by company by company, often driven by intellectual property. which either has been stolen or misappropriated or forced to be disclosed and all those things. Those are real jobs, and by the way, they're real good jobs. They're not MIC jobs. They're jobs. They're jobs for engineers that pay $100,000 to $300,000 a year. They're good jobs. So you put the multiplier on that per each person who was getting that money, and you have 7 other people or 6 other people around in the community, lawyers and doctors and everybody else. That's a lot of people who just went out of work. So to me at least, this isn't mysterious. And it's not a small thing, and it's not caused by some sideshow somewhere where you just click your fingers. You really have to accept the fact that you're in a battle with a model, the only point of which was to have asymmetric trade. And when that happens, you lose jobs. It's not just about Walmart. It's not just about getting cheap underwear at Walmart. It's really about losing jobs and losing small-time businesses and big businesses. So these things are all connected. They're all part of one idea, one story, one big business model against our big business model. And the sooner we see it that way, I think, the sooner it's going to be that we can fix it and make things better. And I'll say it again, for both countries. Because probably in China, if we had Xi Jinping here tonight, of course he's a ruler, so he has to say untrue things sometimes. But 2 years ago, he probably would have said, everything's great. Our model, as a matter of fact, he did say this, our model is better than the American model. We're the guys you should be copying worldwide as a national business model. We've just proven it with our 30 years of success. Today, if he were here, I don't think he'd say that. Or if he did, he'd be lying. So clearly China stumbled. They're kind of crashing, and the hens have come home to roost. And it's pretty clear that that model was in fact based on fraud and based on theft. And no matter that it's a top-down command economy, at some point you still will fall. You can put it off longer because you're in control, but you still will fall. Ultimately, economies rise and fall based on productivity, and that's all there is to it. And if you are more productive year to year, good. If you're less, bad. And robbing banks is productive in the short term, but not in the long term. And people who look at this, now here's an area of frustration, say, well, we shouldn't have protection. We shouldn't have tariffs. We shouldn't be protection. We shouldn't go into that era of 1930s. Look, banks have locks and vaults, and there are cops in front of the banks. And no one complains that you put a cop in front of a bank. It's protecting your money. There's nothing wrong or unethical or politically misunderstood in doing something to keep someone from stealing from you. That's different from the normal definition of protectionism in economic books. When someone is destroying your steel business or your chip business or your computer business by underselling by 50% using subsidized funds that are completely illegal by the WTO group that China belongs to, that's wrong. And there are processes that lead to tariffs, and those tariffs are there for a reason. It's not about whether you're a lefty or a righty. It's about someone stealing your kids' money out of your piggy bank, and you have a right to protect yourself from that. So we should be unafraid to use tools that are economic tools to respond to an economic challenge, and that will, by the way, work. It'll work. It worked with Japan in the 80s, and it'll work with China now. And in fact, it's the only time that China has ever responded to American complaints about this challenge. It was when President Obama mentioned the fact that he was going to bring sanctions, an economic response, and within days they changed their behavior after years of nothing but scorn. So this does work, and I think it's quite possible to build a diplomatic model out of this very simple idea where the two countries work together economically instead of yelling at each other or warships going here and there, just discussing economic ways that we can protect ourselves against economic transgressions according to WTO rules, clearly laid out, and that's all we have to do. We have to do it fast and do it well. But if we do that, China itself will end up healthier than they are now. So it really, I'm not blowing smoke here, it really would be a win-win, even if it's tough medicine in the short term. So I really believe in this, and I think when you look at the new administration, everyone's pretty worried about it. But when we see the China approach in general, it seems spot on. And that's a good thing, because our concern has been for a long time that China is of such a scale that the continued practice of what we call the infomerc model could destroy the world economy. Not just destroy China, which is already happening, it could destroy the world economy. And that would be a bad thing. Not just bad for the United States, we're the best off probably, but it'd be bad for everybody. So it's good news, I think, that Mr. Trump has appeared to understand in a way that most people didn't exactly what was happening on the China side and on the U.S. side and how to fix it. I hope that he does what he says, because he doesn't always do that, but if he stays the course and does what he says, probably things will get better for both sides. Now, since I brought up the T word, we have this joke at SNS. How long can you go in a lunch conversation, whatever, before the T word comes up? And then we call it the T interval. And it's not very long usually. I just thought it might be helpful. A lot of people are very emotional about this, fine. But you got to realize a couple things maybe. One is, this is the ugliest campaign I've ever seen. And all of us are little pigeons. We're kind of the rabbits in the, and we're the test bunnies. And so these professional media folks have been spending a lot of time helping us hate each other or helping us hate the other candidate. That's despicable. I think both candidates did this on purpose, and shame on them. And here we are, we're like the collateral damage now. Everyone's walking around mad at their wife and husband because they can't talk to each other. That's too bad. We shouldn't conduct elections doing that. But it happened, and so now we have to cleanse ourselves. We take a breath, step back from the television set and the internet, and regain our humanity, and our objectivity. So I think it's probably clear to everybody, no matter what party you belong to already, that Donald Trump has backed off on almost every single thing he said during the primary campaign and during the election. So that's interesting. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it's interesting. Didn't have to be that way. And when I look at Mr. Trump, and I want to start with, I am not an apologist for him, and I did not vote for him. But when I look at Mr. Trump, I think I have a different view of him than most people do. And it partly came from him telling me who he was. I've never met him, just like he's never met Mr. Putin. But I really have never met him. And he wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. And I read that book a long time ago. I thought this was a pretty interesting book. All you have to do is read The Art of the Deal, and you have all you need to know. It's not about religion. It's not about GOP or Democrat. It's about selling real estate. It's about making deals. That's it, I'm done. That's Donald Trump. And all this other stuff about he hates this and he hates that and these guys and those guys, and I don't think so. I think he likes to do deals. And one way he does deals, unfortunately, is he insults people or things or ideas as a way of like buying your car. If you had a car and I was Donald Trump and I wanted your car, I'd say that car looks like crap. But I'll take it off your hands, And then we'd agree on the price. And then, as you've seen, you stand up here with me and say, this is my best friend, and he has the most beautiful car in the world. This is what's happening over and over again. So you're looking at a guy whose whole life has been made of transactions, and that's what he does. I don't think he looks past the transactions very far. He just wants to do a good deal after a good deal. A good day is a good deal, right? Good deal is a good day. So if you have this view of him, I think it's an accurate view, and it takes all the poison out of the thing, and it kind of helps you see his weaknesses, which are many, and also his strengths. He might get a better deal for TPP or something. He probably will. He's a very good negotiator. But he's not a deep person, I don't think. And by the way, I think he's quite smart. He's just smart in his own deal way. He's not smart in the way we might have wanted to have FDR or make a list of people, who are president. He's a lot smarter than George Bush Jr., but that's not saying anything. So it's good to have a smart guy in the White House. He's a pretty smart guy, I think. He's just a very different personality. So it's going to be volatile. It'll be every morning, oh my gosh, what was it this morning on NPR? But it'll be exciting. It'll be scary, terrifying. But he's not stupid, and I think that he wants to do well for the country, and I think he wants to do well for himself as a president, so he's remembered as a great guy. That's a good thing for us. And in the end, he'll probably do a lot of good deals. End of it. That's it. He won't look like a Republican. He won't look like a Democrat. He won't look like anything except the guy from New York who was doing business deals before he got elected. I hope that's somewhat helpful for all you. There's a number, let's see, two things. One is immigration. So, there's a lot of immigration going on right now, and I've been asking myself, where did it come from? 3 years ago, immigration was and then suddenly we were being told, like, Aleppo. Well, Aleppo is a city. Syria is a country, Aleppo is a city. Aleppo was not did not result in millions and millions of people around the world from all over going to somewhere else. Some fraction of that, maybe it's 2% or 10%, but it's not the story. So why do we suddenly have, every country is facing either an exodus or an influx of immigrants. And some people say it's climate change. Well, I'm a big believer in climate change, so maybe it is. But within that, you could say, well, by climate change, what you mean is economics. You have a place that was farmland that's turned into a desert, everybody has to leave. Or it was flooded, and so they lose their farmland, they have to leave. Those things are all true. But I think it's helpful. It would be helpful to us if we stopped thinking about Aleppo, the hell with Aleppo, sorry, but started thinking about economics and saying to yourself, we have a world trend today which is gigantic, and it is people moving from place A to place B because guess what? They have the internet and they've seen that it's better somewhere else. It's that simple. Would you rather live in Germany or, make a list, would you rather live in Sweden or, and the answer is A, not B. Everyone would rather live in A than B. Most of the world lives in B right now. So there is this huge flux of folks trying to go from B to A. And I don't blame them. It's really up to the people who live in A to decide what to do about it. But they know that they're better off. People in Germany know that they have a better place than Sudan. If you live in Sudan right now and you're not trying to get to Germany, why aren't you, right? So it's kind of like, I get it. There's a true qualitative, objective difference in the threat to your children, in the health of your family, in the amount of money you can make per year. It's better in Germany. There's something about this that hasn't been digested by us as a nation or in the media, and we're feeling really sorry for the folks from Syria. That's worthy, but we're missing the entire trend. And I think we need to see this more clearly so that we can figure it out and deal with it. We don't have any laws about this other than our existing laws. So all this monkey shines about the wall or now there are walls in Europe. That was supposed to be, Schengen, right? It was like everyone was supposed to get free passage. Well, there's no free passage now. Not in Germany, not in anywhere. So UK pulled out. Brexit was caused by immigration, in my opinion, out of control. So we're in a moment where we have to kind of come to grips with this and stop worrying about, is it a Syria problem where we just stop the bombing and then it'll go away? No, it won't. It won't go away. And if not, then how do we re-reg our laws so that we can have humane but intelligent laws based on the idea that we have the internet and everybody in the world can see everybody else in the world where it is and how good it is, and maybe they want to go there. And we need processes for deciding yes or no, let's let them or not let them, not based on whether they're terrorists, but based on whether they're economically important to that country, I guess. If yes, great. If not, maybe not. And in the world of, so jumping quickly to the world of numbers, my friend Larry Smar and I take road trips every year. He's a really brilliant guy. And so we have fun. A couple days of nonstop, no sleep, ideating together. And this year we did it again. And within 10 minutes of starting our road trip, I came up with this idea. And I call it the Larry number. And the Larry number is this. What is the value of real estate on the coasts of all the world that will be lost to global warming make up a number, over 50 years? What is that number? I'm not in real estate, so I don't have a clue what this number is. I'm just calling it the Larry number. But I have a feeling that we can't afford it. So in other words, instead of arguing about the Antarctic and the Arctic, just take a Trump view of this. Be a real estate guy. Just say, when you lose Miami, what was that worth? When you lose part of Manhattan, what was that worth? And it turns out, of course, all the most expensive real estate is on the coast. So it's going to be a really big number worldwide. And that's one way of looking at the whole problem of global warming, which is very down to earth, simple, kind of simple, and probably helpful. So again, I don't know what the Larry number is, but the bad news about the Larry number is I don't think there's enough money in the world to buy that real estate. If it was destroyed and we had to replace New York City and Miami and make all this, LA, I don't think we have the money to do that. So I'm pretty sure of that. So the Larry number is an interesting thing, and maybe it's one way for us to discuss the risks and the risk profile of global warming instead of arguing about coal all day long. Countries, I'm just going to run through this very quickly. It looks to me, now I have to mention, these ideas and predictions were made on December 1st of last year in time for our New York dinner. And now I've gone through them, and some of them have already either happened or not. But the prediction I made, if you saw it in our publication, of a rate increase in December from the Fed, that's already done now. So that's a stupid thing to talk about. There's something going on with countries and companies and how we view each other, this whole globalization conversation. And it's another area of frustration to me in terms of real economics. So a lot of folks think, you know, an American globalist, an American tech company that's in every country has no country. That's passé. That's kind of politically stupid. It's not advanced. It's not subtle. It's not sophisticated to think in terms of countries anymore. But I'll tell you what, if you're a company in Russia or China, you know exactly what country you belong to. You're not confused. There's no gray area there at all. So we're back to a card game where one hand is being played with one set of rules and the other hand is being, it would be great if everybody was just going to be a globalist, that's fine, but that's not happening. In fact, the biggest players would appear to be playing with a different set of rules where they know exactly whose country they belong to, and that country is helping them. So we need to kind of back off on the whole idea of how wonderful it is to be globalists and be more pragmatic about the world and actually understand country by country what's going on and not have our corporate leaders try to fool us into thinking that that doesn't matter. Because they too are acting too short-term in their own interests, not long-term. And they too are being damaged, but can't tell us because of that. They have quarterly reports. And unfortunately, we can't therefore turn to them for guidance because they'd give us bad guidance. And that's happening all the time. Now, little by little, things are changing. So, as an example, the American Chamber is in China and is here. They do a lot of looking around the world. They're very active in surveying their members. And if you look at their results, they've found out, if you went back 4 or 5 years, they want to have nothing to do with anything that would upset China. Just shut up and keep going. We were going to make a lot of money over there. Well, now that's not true. Now you do the survey in China, and they say, number one concern is IP theft. Well, that's interesting. They're over there, but they're worried about it. And then if you ask the folks from America, they say, well, this is a huge problem. We've got to solve it. So let's put that on the agenda. So it's interesting. It's different. It's just qualitatively different. Middle East. What a mess. And some of the stuff kind of is already happening. I think the Saudis are not done, but down, despite the young blood they brought in. Assad is going to remain the leader of Syria. There's no question in my mind about that. Russia is more firmly entrenched now in the Middle East, almost than we are. ISIS is going to be, in some sense, destroyed, but probably hydra-headed, appearing elsewhere for a long time. There's going to be a new vacuum in Iraq. I have no idea how that gets filled, but that's where ISIS came from, was the vacuum that we created in Iraq. Thank you, George Jr. And Yemen looks to me almost like the next Iraq. So I don't get the Yemen thing. I don't see how that gets fixed yet. All these areas of turmoil that are, of course, thousands of years old, but it would be nice if we could get off of oil. It would be nice if we could stop being involved in that anger. You know, if we didn't need the oil, we wouldn't have to be involved in that thousands of years of anger. And I think it would be better for everybody. Let them figure it out for themselves, and this is a personal opinion, and then keep going forward with great stuff. We don't need to be pulled into this, in my opinion. Turkey, I feel, is lost on 3 or 4 levels. So lost to Europe. Europe didn't really want Turkey, but now it's not going to be part of that process. Lost to the West. I think they're going to be part of the Russian enclave somehow, Russia and China. Lost in terms of being sectarian. It's now going to become a Sharia state. It's just absolutely clear to me. So Turkey's, after all the, 40, 50 years, since Ataturk, where everyone was so proud of Turkey kind of coming out of the Dark Ages and becoming a very modern, European-like country. I feel that that's been lost now. And all of the things that Erdogan is doing to his own people in the name of some goofy guy in America, I'm not buying any part of that. I believe it's just he should take responsibility for these horrible things he's doing. And we're lucky we're not in Turkey. Russia, it's going to be interesting to see. For those of you who saw Rex Tillerson's confirmation yesterday, he went out against Mr. Putin in a way that Mr. Trump has not done. Without a strong stand by us, I think the Baltics, Moldova, Georgia, Ukraine are all at risk. And you may have noticed we sent NATO troops in to Poland yesterday. So clearly we're paying attention. South Korea, ick, what a mess. It's possible that Ban Ki-moon will become the next head of South Korea. And that's probably a good thing. But the current structure between the Shaibol and the political parties and all these scandals isn't sustainable, I don't think. So probably something has to break there, and what you're seeing is that process. And after it breaks, maybe something better will come in. Japan, I think, is on a pretty good run. So I would call it Japan rising. People are always writing about how bad off Japan is. I think they're doing great. I would encourage you to read the book, South Japan, and you can get it on Amazon. It's a great book, and buy 2 copies, and then review one of them. Italy, Portugal, Spain, and Greece, I think are bankrupt. I think they're out, they're done. I don't understand any of those countries. I really think that there are countries now that are kind of kaput economically. And if you look at France, it's pretty clear the right wing is going to have a lot of say there. I don't know if they're going to take over or they'll just have a very strong presence. That's true all around the world, but France seems to be particularly vulnerable. And all this brings up the question of how does a nation go bankrupt? I mean, we're probably bankrupt in some way. We have way too much debt, so we might be bankrupt. And, Sudan, Somalia, Zimbabwe, Russia, Cuba, Venezuela. At what point do we have so many countries that are bankrupt that something else happens? You can't just continually print fake money. At some point, something's going to happen. So I think we should be aware of the fact that it does matter on some level. So the tech landscape. Paul mentioned flow and interaction, which I think those are, in fact, universal drivers. We talked here at the Tech Trends meeting about that. And we did create a new architecture called flow computing. I'm really excited about it. We no longer use the term Internet of Things, we call it Internet of Flows, because it's the flow of information from those things, those sensors, that matters. And if we look at the basic landscape, the biggest fight right now is in chips. We've had the fights already for routers, for infrastructure, for make a list of things in the tech world, computers, PCs, pads, smartphones. One by one, those have fallen to the low-cost provider. And almost inevitably, that low-cost provider is from Asia, and almost inevitably, it's a copy or a steal on the IP that was originally in that product, whatever it was. So it's kind of a sad story if you're an innovator. We need to change this dynamic because it doesn't allow innovation to continue in the world of routers or chips or whatever. It's a very daunting situation. But that's what's happened. At the same time, there are these very large-scale vertical opportunities, I think. So we're seeing companies create new vertical silos with everything inside, making their own chips, making their own everything, a complete supply chain inside of companies. It reminds me of like 1950 or something. The original General Motors, every part of the supply chain is inside the house. That probably is happening in part as a response to all the stuff we just talked about for the last half hour. And if you're running one of those companies, you probably ask yourself, is my supply chain safe and secure? No. Do I have control over my destiny? No. Do I have pricing control? No. Is my brand safe? No. And so we said, well, how do I fix that? And one way to fix that would be put everything under one roof and have a vertical integrated system again. From a tech perspective, one of the really interesting things to me is, And I don't think folks here have probably thought too much. So everyone's interested in AI right now. We are too. I don't want to give something away, but think of this. In using GPUs like NVIDIA, everybody knows about how well they're doing. It's a simple idea. You have all these cores, make up a number, 256 cores, lots of cores in a chip. And you tend to think mathematically, so that's going to be 256 times better than one core. No, it isn't actually. And the problem, of course, is that we've been used to having a single, not a single thread, but a single line of computation, and that's not very effective when you try to turn it upside on its side and run it with 256 cores, because we don't have the other tools that would allow us to make full capacity usage of those chips. Oops. So while it's true that we need to have GPUs running things and so forth, it's not true that more is better all the time. And in fact, I'll tell you something funny. There's some guys in Berkeley who are very smart about all this stuff, and they've been trying to get NSF grants to build a new supercomputer using NVIDIA chips. And the government wants them to buy the super hot Tesla chips that are very expensive. They're $1,000, I mean. And they don't want them, because it turns out that for the kind of machine learning and deep learning stuff they're doing, it's actually better to be fuzzier. You don't need all those digits of excellence. You need to have about, instead of 64 bits, 32 bits is better. It might even be 16 bits is better. So they want to buy the gaming chips that are going into all the games that are about a tenth the price and that work better than the Tesla chips. And they're having this big fight with NSF over doing this kind of retro thing to get a big computer up. But that's the truth of the matter. And so capacity usage, I've not heard that discussed too much, but if you think about it, it's a big problem. We can pretty much tap out this wonderful tech of turning things on their side and running lots of cores without ever reaching what we wanted to reach in a world where iteration is our only trick. So ask anybody who's really in AR or machine learning, what's the cool thing that you're doing that's so wonderful? And they'll say, oh, well, we finally got cheap enough, fast enough stuff that we could run 100,000 iterations against a data set and train the chips on that. That's it. I'm done. That's what we're doing. So you don't have to be a genius to do this. Anybody in this room could take the Coursera course and start doing it themselves. It's what we do. And it's very effective to a point. Right? So there's the good news and the bad news. The good news is it's very effective, and we're all going to be doing it. The bad news is it's asymptotically effective, and we don't know how to make use of the hardware we got, much less the other stuff. The interesting thing is there are new types of chips that are non-von Neumann chips. They're coming out, and we'll talk more about that in a second, and that's really kind of exciting. So there are wholly different ways of programming, wholly different ways of building chips, and if you're a tech person, wow, it's like day one, erase the whiteboard, start from scratch. How exciting is that? So it'll be a big food fight over who's, watch NVIDIA. They're fascinating because they don't really have what they claim to have, but they have a lot. And Jensen Huang is a very smart guy, MIT guy, and he knows that he's sitting in the catbird seat. And so if you saw the CES, go see the CES talk he gave last week. He's going to make windshield wipers, and stop signs, and everything, right? He gets it. He owns, right now at the moment, he owns everything. And he says it in the CES speech. He won't own everything, but he's smart enough to at least try, right? You can see that coming. So this is an exciting time, I think, for anybody in computing and in software, in operating systems. All the stuff that we use is going to get revolutionized. We're not going to keep doing Intel, whatever. It's terrifying if you're Intel, terrifying. But it's really exciting whether you're NVIDIA or IBM or somebody else, New Edge, people who are making these chips, Automata chip out of Micron, just brand new everything. You guys have to start from scratch learning how they work, how to program them, but it's probably worth it because the things we'll be able to do with those are radically better and radically newer and more efficient and lower power consumption, all that stuff, than the old stuff. So after maybe 30 years run in the x86 mindset, we're out of that. And that's, in terms of 2017, that is really the signal moment, I think, for me, is recognizing the exciting change. On the other hand, the thing that people always talk about, which is cloud, is facing an interesting challenge because, let's see, Paul, how are we doing, right? Good? Wave your hand, whatever. Cloud's great, cloud's exciting, it's really smart, but it looks to me as though everyone's competing. You look at AWS, you look at Azure, and all these different clouds. they're converging, and huge amounts of money. If you look at the amount of money that's being spent on building out cloud, it's stunning. And it's happening because people are using the cloud, so there are revenues to support that investment. But what if they actually do all look the same? What if they really are converging in feature sets, and we combine gigantic international investment with lack of differentiation? If they don't differentiate, if they grow together instead of apart, then you can kind of do the math here and go, well, at some point, something's going to break, someone's going to fail, someone with 2% better performance or 3% better pricing is going to win everything, because why would you go to the other guy? And so I think there's a real chance of a cloud crash in terms of the economics in tech that isn't being discussed yet, I don't think, but it's a big risk. So billions and billions of dollars going into it, and at risk. And having said all that, let's jump over to predictions, and then we'll do questions. And as you all know who've been here before, I read these not because I'm trying to be boring, which I'm sure is one of the results, but I read them because I have to live with them for the next year, and then we grade them and so on. So in order, and again, some of these things will sound a little less exciting than they might have sounded on December 1st because it's later. So my first one is Apple is done. Now when I said that, Apple stock was going up, and people probably knew that Apple was tired in some way, but it wasn't like done. Well, now we have, I think the last week we've had 3 analysts come out against Apple, sell Apple. It's pretty clear that they're getting a lot of criticism from Wall Street. So Apple is done. No more real innovation or excitement. Apple's failure to innovate and create new product lines has reached a critical failure point. Indicators include connected car cancellations and the outflow of key players, Nest loss, and founder departures, nothing evident except tediously similar products and continued kowtowing to China. The result for Apple is that hope really is a strategy. Want to buy a Cadillac? Number 2. HP expectations flip. Now this too, I think, has actually just happened since December 1st. Contrary to current stock moves as of December 1st, HP is up, HPE is down, and that's now happened, so check that box. I don't know if it'll be true at the end of the year, but I guess I'm betting that it will. Number 3, Qualcomm and NVIDIA drive the chip world. And as you all know, if you're watching, NVIDIA had a huge run-up after December 1st, so that worked out so far. The first has more promising company markets, and the second, more promising technology. Number 4, servers continue to outpace PCs in real innovation, with the next generation likely powered by Xeon Phis. That's an easy call. Number 5, carry-alongs outpace PCs, carry-alongs being kind of a 9x7 format computer, as consumers continue to outpace producers. This category now dominates the personal compute space, represented by phablets, pads, Surface Pro, Intel 2-in-1s, small Mac Air-like laptops. All are in virtually identical sectors. So all these different things that sound different, they come from different companies, they're different, their phone, or they're all going to the same thing. It reminds me of like the new industrial state. They're all going into one thing, and it's 9x7 or something like that, and it's that way for a reason. It's a perfect ergonomic combination of what we need for our brain in terms of maximum bandwidth to our brain and what we want to carry around in our hands. Number 6, the new Microsoft gets its mojo back. The Windows guys become the guys inventing the Xbox, HoloLens, Surface Hubs, Surface Pros, Surface Studio, and the guys who beat Apple for the coolness award in the recent New York City Valley demo showdown. Which stock would you rather own today? And I think you know my answer. I think probably you might feel the same way. The car replaces, number 7, the car replaces the PC and smartphone as the exciting new test and launch platform for apps and innovations. New efforts will include advanced, connected, personalization, wireless, syncing of home car connections, car connections, car net connections, nav that's personally informed, shared memory, and database, radical new entertainment features. And of course, CES just happened last week, and it looked to me like the entire CES show was a car show. So clearly, and what's interesting about this is I think of this as a vector. So when you're a tech person, you see some things take forever to become real, and some things happen very quickly. And I'm starting to suspect that there's a kind of a theory you could make up where you need a vector, you need a platform, you need to have something that's already being used. You need an existing TV set, and then you go into that place and revolutionize everything. Your existing transport called a car, and Elon Musk goes, thanks for your help, Detroit, I'll take it from here. And then it becomes a computer with thousands of computers. And so I think that there's this interesting idea of enabling or vectoring where you take patterns of behavior and use and you convert them into very, very rapid technological change without the usual need for deep investment of infrastructure and so on. Roads are already there. So this is, I don't know if this is true, but it seems true to me. Number 8, the smartphone as zombie. Steve is dead. Copycats cut margins. China and South Korea subsidize their phones. Real innovation takes a vacation. Google is the only source of smartphone innovation now. For everyone else, phones show the same level of real innovation as Asian copycat patents. Number 9, the shadow knows. The Facebook shadow grows. Fake news, the Trump election, aiding China censors, hip trying to name his baby after Xi Jinping, and other craven behaviors relating to sucking up to bad guys and invading privacy. Facebook's ethics leave a bad taste in the mouth of anyone paying attention. What part of your life do you really want to share with Zuck? New social networks benefit from this and grow. And number 10, non von Neumann gets a foothold. Real progress is made in these new architectures as the limits of the old become painfully obvious. Non von Neumann may be not quite ready for commercialization at scale, but will definitely be breaking into the future tech roadmaps of industry leaders during 2017. So that's it. We'll see each other again next year and decide if they worked out or not. But so far, so good. And Paul, so far, although I have one more missing piece in terms of the grading thing, we've now pushed it up to 95 from 94.7, so it's working so far. I'd love to do questions with people, so please ask questions, and I'll be happy to answer.
Start out with Paul's question up here.
Well, Mark, you said Apple is done.
Yeah.
When Alexa came into our household, I said to my wife, why didn't that come out of Apple? And then the second kind of thought was, how is it that Amazon is innovating at such a rapid pace? What's going on inside that company that allows them to do what Apple used to do?
Somebody once said to me, the culture of a company is the personality of the CEO. And I think that's true. It was George Hubman. And when you look at each of these companies, that's what you see. So when Steve was alive, Apple was the most innovative product design company in the world. Tim Cook isn't that guy. He knows it. When you look at Amazon, you've got a guy who measures everything and seeks for constant improvement in almost a brutal pace. You read books, you talk to people who work there. It's not necessarily fun, but it's effective. I wouldn't say that it's innovative in the normal sense that Apple was innovative or that Google is innovative. But certainly they know what they want and they get it. So Alexa is an interesting thing because they did a good job on Alexa. And they didn't invent Alexa. I mean, they didn't invent the idea of a personal assistant. They just put it into a speaker. That's smart. That's pretty smart. But it's not like world-class smart, it's just smart. And so what was good was they actually did a pretty good job on the language part, and we know some of the folks involved in that. They did a lot of testing. Well, they have a large database, and they have a lot of money, and they have this guy named Jeff who just won't quit. So he's pretty focused. So I think the personality that you're seeing in Jeff, measure it, improve it, stay focused, get it done, try again. It almost reminds me of Bill Gates. Not that he's inventing something, but that that version 3 is going to be killer. Version 1 might not be so good. So I think that Amazon has no limit, not in terms of innovation again, but in terms of what they're going to control. We just saw Macy's is essentially closing, and Jeff's hiring 100,000 people in America this year. So yeah, I mean, Amazon, is there any business that he's not going to be in? I don't think there is. So it's the personality of the guy.
one from afar. If China stopped buying U.S. treasuries at the same time the Fed is raising rates, what would that look like for U.S. interest rates and the U.S. economy?
So is the question, there's a little statement in there, is the question about buying treasuries or about what the interest rates are going to be?
It's not my question, I'm rereading it. So,
Haven't they been dumping treasuries already?
Meg?
I would read that as the Fed is raising rates. What does that look like for the U.S. interest rates and the economy, meaning that China is dumping currency?
So if I understand the question properly, the part of this is showmanship more than it is about economic management. And both of the last two raises that the Fed did were done to send a message to the investing world that things are okay here. And if in a world of everyone dropping rates, if you're willing to raise your rates, the messaging that comes out of the United States is we're healthy and happy. And that's an important message. It's a small enough change that didn't have any real meaning to the world, but it meant everything to the world in the direction that it was going. It was going back up. So we'd already quit qualitative easing. That was the first message. We're not going to do print fake money anymore. We're not going to be buying our own treasuries. But then the second step was we stopped that. Now we're also going to stop this monkey shines with zero interest rates. We're going to get out of that world. We're going to create some space to maneuver. So we're going to do this. And they'll probably, just for that one reason, to have more maneuvering room, which is what they like, they'll probably keep doing this very gently, not very often. Because we're not that, the world is really a risky place right now. So I think everyone knows that. So I think, if we saw a quarter of a point a year, or a little bit more, half a point a year, every year for, bang, bang, bang. No one's going to get hurt, and what will happen is they'll end up with enough room that if they need to cut later, they'll have room to do it. And none of that has to do with the actual rate. It's just much more about having good messaging with the world and the ability to maneuver.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
They said that was fully answering the question. So.
Okay.
Just a clarifier.
Who's talking? Hi.
Just a clarifier.
I don't think your mic is working.
So just a clarifier, you said that, and we do know that for some time the Chinese GDP has been tracking at 6 or 7% growth.
That's what they say.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you saying that it's actually shrinking at a 2% clip? Or
Yes.
at some point it is going to start?
No, we've been saying it for 2 years now.
Okay. So you think that that's occurring right now?
Yes. So, the growth rate is the term we're talking about. We think the growth rate is negative. So we think that the economy is contracting. And you can build fake highways to nowhere all day long and make the GDP whatever you want, but the real economy is contracting, we think.
Got one. So earlier you said that Intel x86 is on its way out. Do you see ARM taking its place in personal computing market, just like it took over mobile devices, or does Intel or another manufacturer own this space for a while?
I've been an ARM fan for a long time, and everyone uses ARM, so it's almost like, what does it mean anymore? Qualcomm uses ARM, so it's like, what is ARM? It's interesting. It's almost like Kleenex losing its brand name, kind of. But having said that, no, I'm not as excited about ARM as I used to be. ARM is now a Japanese company, as you know, so that's tough on Cambridge and the UK, I think. And Cambridge and the UK is one of the great innovation centers in the world, so they'll still be there. But will they still be as innovative? I don't know. I would say probably not. And then a deeper problem is they didn't have a business model with real margins in it, and that was always their failure. So everyone's got an ARM chip, but they never got paid, basically. And that was why everybody's got an ARM chip. But it didn't work. It worked in terms of volume, but it didn't work to make them a great company. They lost control of their own destiny. So they screwed up. They don't exist anymore as a company. They're a division. So I think that you might have been really excited about them 2 years ago, but if you say next year, I'd be much more excited about Qualcomm or NVIDIA than about ARM.
What did you discover was the killing the orcas?
Say again?
What did you discover is the thing that's been killing the orcas?
Oh, thanks for asking. It's so simple, but we have to put it into a sentence, and it's a very carefully constructed sentence in terms of the order of things. And here's how the sentence goes. In years of low Chinook salmon count, comma, the presence of motorized craft increases the need for food and decreases their ability to get it. The result is they draw down their blubber, which is full of toxins, and then they die. Now, I didn't say the toxins kill them, and I don't think they do. But all this happens in that order. So in terms of numbers, they're starving, they're dying of starvation. Toxins don't kill you by starvation. And for an adult female, there's a 17% increase in how much food is required when motorized craft are near. That's a lot of food. It's like having to have 20% more fish in the water. And you can blind those animals, blind their sonar, by up to 97% at legal 200-meter distances with one outboard motor. And we've got 30 boats with twin Mercs on them. So clearly, they can't hunt. And there are probably other things that are also involved, but those are the big three.
So here within Whatcom County, we have a lot of energy innovations happening and companies that are growing and thriving, and we expect some really great things from them over the next couple of years. And within Eastern Washington, there's really significant cheap power and massive bandwidth. So the question is, within both of our areas and within the state in general, how might we capitalize on these assets for long-term growth?
Quincy is, where everyone goes, right? When I look at Eastern Washington, intellectually, I see two places, I guess. I see Quincy because of the confluence of cheap power and kind of perfect location for a data center. And then I see Moses Lake, which has this brilliant material science thing going on with carbon fiber and graphene soon, I think. And so if I were in the Eastern Washington area, I would be thinking about those two areas for development. I mean, I think that those are both world-class in ways that there aren't very many world-class things. So as you probably know, BMW gets their carbon fiber from Moses Lake. I've talked to Governor Inslee about this a couple times. I don't know if we get it over here, but this is a big deal. UW has created its own Center of Excellence for carbon-related composites. Boeing, of course, builds the Dreamliner out of composite. This is all the cars in the world you can build out of this stuff, because every pound you take out of a car, better mileage, better everything. It's the cheapest, simplest way of making a better car. So we're going to 3D print cars. We're going to use plastics and graphene, I think, to make those cars. If I were in Moses Lake, I'd be jumping from fiber to graphene as fast as I possibly could do. And if I were doing the data center thing, I'd be doing the opposite of what I was talking about earlier. I'd be trying to differentiate instead of making everything look more and more the same.
And here within Whatcom County?
Whatcom County?
Yeah.
You mean, what should we do here? Well, we're doing it, right? Question. Well, I think you're doing it. So if you could do two things that would help put you on the map and help make money and help create excitement, I think you're already underway. So I would say hit them harder. So the one thing that we talked about a long time ago was becoming experts in cybersecurity or mobile cybersecurity, and you guys are doing that. You have a Center of Excellence right here. Western is working with Whatcom, so I would just hit it hard. These are things that are valuable worldwide. It's one of the hottest markets on the planet. You're already done or half done or whatever. You can always do more. So maybe developing your reputation so others know. I don't know if people fly here from Ireland to study cyber, but they ought to. So maybe part of it is just getting the word out. But really, that's a good place to be. So technically, that's something that a small town or a small school compared to Harvard or whatever can do and have outsized attraction to others. And the other thing, which might even be more important, is you guys are now doing what we used to call the Inkwell program in schools. So you've got bandwidth to your schools, you've got kids using laptops or pads. You've done all the right things to get your education system ahead of many other places. Now, this is something that's being done more and more around the planet, but you've done it early, and I think you're doing it well. You're already past, I think you're past your pilot program now?
Yeah, and we just passed the tech levy with our community support.
So, you know, I would just, same thing with that, I would just hit it hard, but I would maximize that, and then I would brag about it. I would make sure that it's being done right, and then I would tell people about it. Because people who run tech companies care about their kids, and they want them to have access to technology, they don't fight it. And that's something that you guys have already laid the groundwork for.
Mark, back here, thanks. I know this isn't your prime area, but could you give a prediction about the healthcare industry in the U.S.?
When Obama passed, when the Clintons tried to pass health care reform, they were stopped by Harry and Louise. In other words, the insurance industry. And when Obama passed his health care reform, the first thing he did was he called in the pharma guys and the insurance guys, and he said, I don't want to fight with you. You get a pass. Okay. And he got it done, which stunned everyone. However, you have to pick your problem, right? And so I think the problem that President Obama was trying to solve was health care for everyone. He saw that as being the problem. It certainly is a problem, and that's his choice. He was president. If I had been president, I might not have taken that order of things, because I see cancer on health care. I see a really big problem with health care, which is the costs. Whenever you have a business model where the customer can't have input for the price, you're screwed. And by design, that's what we've built. So you don't get to pick a price for your broken leg. You just pay what the insurance company tells you you're going to pay. Uh-oh. Guess what's going to go up? Your broken leg every year. So it goes up like 19% a year sometimes. That's crazy. And we're not out of that. So if instead of attacking the problem of make sure everybody has access to the system, we first did let's get the cost craziness out of the system. We pay 4x what everybody else pays, 2 to 4x, and we have worse outcomes in something like 9 or 10 other countries. That's stupid. If you're rich, you can get pretty good health care in America, but we shouldn't have that basic situation. We should pay what everybody else pays. We should have outcomes that are as good as theirs. The only thing that's happening is money is going somewhere. It's being wasted in the system. We need some genius in administration to look at our healthcare system and rejigger it for being efficient and not allowing overcharging, not allowing fraud, not allowing all these things that are now just built into the system, which don't make anybody any healthier. And then when we get it working, it's like an engine. When we get it working that way properly, we'll be able to much better afford bringing the other 20 or 40 million people in than if we could running this thing at these horrible growth rates and costs without any better outcomes. So I would do it the other way around.
You said that you predict the cars to replace the PC. Do you think the driving safety and technology of driverless cars is going to keep up with the downward numbers of distracted driving deaths that seem to keep happening with all of the things that we're putting into the cars?
Yeah, if I understand your question, I do. I mean, we have an increased number of accidents caused by people who are tweeting at each other. That's getting worse and worse. And states are now changing the laws from you can't talk to someone to you can't even have a phone on in your car, And I don't blame them, because there are so many accidents that are fatal accidents caused by some misguided person trying to do two things at once. And we know that the cars that are, whether you want to call them autonomous or driverless, are safer. We just know it. They are. Statistics, they are. So your question is yes, and my answer is yes. They will definitely cross, and that'll probably be one of the reasons why we want to have driverless cars, is they're safer. People will experience them, through carpools, right? They go to New York or Pittsburgh or someplace, and they'll get into an Uber, and it'll be a driverless Uber, and they'll go, oh, that wasn't so bad, and then they'll buy one themselves sometime, or they'll start using them in pools.
One last quick question, Shannon.
Oh, come on. One quick question was, can you give an example of one company that's doing that full vertical? You mentioned that kind of new strategy, but you didn't give any examples.
Yeah. I think Qualcomm is doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my real question.
And I think Microsoft is going toward that same thing.
Bitcoin, gold. Last year you talked about Bitcoin, said it's not a long-term thing. Of course, with the China collapse of their currency, we've seen Bitcoin spike above 1,000 recently, and then gold. Like you talked about how the printing money currency fiat is failing us, but what about new currency or old currency?
So are you asking about gold?
And Bitcoin.
Okay, kind of different from each other. I don't think Bitcoin is a currency. And what I mean by that is a currency, a technical currency needs to have scalability. And I don't think Bitcoin has that. So it's very good for, if you were Wells Fargo and you wanted to secure real estate transactions worldwide in your internal system, it'd be a pretty good system. The blockchain system would be a pretty good system. But if you said to me, I want to replace the dollar with the Bitcoin or whatever these guys, not a chance. It doesn't scale. So I don't think that's going to happen. And in terms of gold, people always buy gold when they're scared. It's up right now. I think it's at a high from quite a while back. But I'm not a gold bug, so I tend to think you're probably wiser off getting good companies over long term and holding them. I don't even like the stock market because of all the volume trading that happens. 60% of the trades are now algorithmic, so it's not like my grandfather's stock market where you just pick a good company and hold it. But you still can. So I would find assets that you believe in. It could even be real estate, but you're going to be better off than gold. If you wanted to buy gold, I'd buy real estate. They're both physical, but yeah. Okay. I think.
Well, thank you for another wonderful talk. It's really great. You're so great. So I've spoken to many of you over the last many years who subscribe to SNS, and you've said that often you stop what you're doing at your computer and read the newsletter. So I'd encourage you all to consider this as a way to get a dose of this over the course of the year. And I had the opportunity to go to FIRE last year, and it was just fantastic. And several of you have also attended that and had a delightful time. So I'd encourage you to consider those opportunities, and they're also available at the member rate to GWADA members. So I'll be sending that over to you all with that same opportunity. I didn't feed Mark the line about what we ought to be doing here. He's been incredibly visionary in that, as have you within our membership. So we participated very heavily in those initiatives, and you all are doing a lot to lean into how we're innovating in K-20 education in our community. We're very uniquely positioned there with 5 institutions of higher learning, having pushed forward a really innovative tech levy last year. And we're just poised to do really awesome things in our city with your support. At TAG, we're very focused on developing that talent pipeline. So our next big event will be Tech Expo, and we'd love to have you participate in that, either coming through as a visitor, learning more about what companies are doing, or as an employer, putting your brand out there. After that, we'll do a fun celebration of K-20 education called Tech Bash in the summer. Great opportunity to come together and support student scholarships. And then in the fall, we'll do another conference largely focused again on cybersecurity to keep amplifying the attention and energy that we have within our community to that. I wanted to turn it over to Ed O'Neill as well. Sorry to make you run up here.
Thanks, Mike. Just a quick closing comment here. I'm Ed O'Neill. I'm Executive Director of Emergency Reporting, which hopefully all of you know is Northwest Washington's fastest growing technology company. We're having a lot of fun here in the community and investing locally and growing our talent pool here. We've been a very strong sponsor of TAG, love everything that's going on here. And also, part of the reason we do this is we respect the commitment to education, bringing events like this here. We were happy to sponsor the event today. We also want to continue that as we look forward to the summer. It's a little chilly today, so I like to think about what's going on in August. We have an opportunity with the Tech Bash event, which is focused primarily on scholarships as well as having fun. And to acknowledge a couple great things that have happened, a partnership that we have with Moss Adams, our finance and accounting partner here in the local community, the growth of our business. We're actually moving in February to the former Moss Adams space. So all that came together in kind of a neat way, and so to sort of celebrate the changes in our business, I want to announce today that Emergency Reporting will be doing a dollar-for-dollar match of any scholarship donations that go as part of the Tech Bash process coming up this August. So that's a real exciting development for us and a way we can give back to all of you.
I didn't know about that until just then, so thanks, Ed.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. That is amazing. Ed came on emergency reporting just in the last year, and we've just really appreciated him. He's joined our board and has been a great spark of energy to us at TAG, and I know emergency reporting is on a big growth curve, and he's a part of that as well. So I would ask you to think about that. That's we've been giving about $5,000 a year over the last few years. We would love to give over $10,000 to our students to have them continue in education. So it's the beginning of the year. It's the time we start thinking about, we just kind of did all our giving, right, to get it in for the tax year. It's time to start budgeting for what you're going to do this year. We have a really good time. There's a lot of companies that sponsor and get involved in the Tech Bash, but also a lot of individuals. So now's the time to start thinking about that. Your dollar could be $2 this summer. So. Yeah, you can contribute all year long. We'll be talking about that. I just want to come back up here one last time and thank our sponsors. We have a great group of people that were involved in this event. And we want to recognize them first. Emergency Reporting, as you've just heard from Ed. Skagit Bank, they've been sponsoring this for the last few years. We really appreciate them. Alpha Technologies, a huge employer of people here, another great sponsor of technology in this area. Whatcom Business Alliance. Varvid, holding the cameras and projecting this across the state. Whatcom Community College, they've been a terrific partner this year. We really appreciate their help ongoing. And Faith Life as well. So thank you very much to our sponsors. We've got a great group of association sponsors. If you haven't heard what we're doing outreach meetings where we'll come to your business, tell you what TAG's involved in, find out what you're involved in, see how we can partner. We'd love to do that. Meg is a great advocate for that. So again, have a wonderful year. Thank you for being a part of this event.